My daughter's husband and his mother threw her off their yacht into the Pacific Ocean at 1 a.m. She was 5 months pregnant. As I screamed her name into the darkness, watching her disappear beneath the black water, they stood there sipping champagne and laughed. Then they ordered the captain to turn the yacht around and head back to shore. They left my daughter there. Left her to drown in the freezing water, 30 miles from land. When the Coast Guard pulled her from the ocean 4 hours later, barely alive, her body temperature at 89 degrees, my grandchild dead inside her, I made one phone call to my sister. I didn't explain. I didn't ask permission. I said 3 words, "It's time, Catherine." Before I tell you how we systematically destroyed one of the most powerful families in San Diego, I need to know, are you the kind of person who believes in real justice? Drop your city in the comments right now. And if you think that throwing a pregnant woman off a yacht and laughing about it deserves consequences that last a lifetime, hit that subscribe button on Revenge Room. Because what I'm about to tell you is one of the most methodical, devastating revenge stories you'll ever hear. And I promise you, every single word is true. My name is David Chen. I'm 67 years old. For 42 years, I was a cardiovascular surgeon at UC San Diego Medical Center. I've held human hearts in my hands. I've restarted hearts that had stopped beating. I've told families their loved ones didn't make it, and I've told families that miracles do happen. But nothing, absolutely nothing, in 4 decades of medicine prepared me for the night I watched my only daughter get thrown off a yacht like garbage. I'm not a violent man. I've dedicated my entire life to saving lives, not destroying them. I'm quiet. Methodical. Patient. My colleagues used to joke that I had ice water in my veins because I never panicked, never lost my composure, not even during the most complicated surgeries. That patience, that cold precision, that ability to see the body as a system of interconnected parts that can fail in very specific ways, that's what I used to destroy the Morrison family. Because here's what wealthy, powerful people forget, the quiet ones aren't weak. We're just waiting. Observing. Planning. And when we finally move, we don't miss. Let me take you back 3 years, to where this nightmare started. My daughter's name is Sarah. Sarah Chen Morrison. 29 years old, brilliant, kind, beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with her appearance and everything to do with her spirit. She was an environmental engineer, working on sustainable water systems for developing countries. She had this fire inside her, this need to make the world better. I raised Sarah alone after my wife, Jennifer, died when Sarah was 6. Ovarian cancer. Stage 4. I was a surgeon, and I couldn't save her. That failure has lived inside me every single day for 23 years. So Sarah became everything to me. Not in an unhealthy way, I made sure of that. I encouraged her independence, supported her dreams, let her make her own mistakes. But she was my purpose. My reason for everything I did. 3 years ago, Sarah met Brandon Morrison at a fundraiser for ocean conservation. Brandon was 32, handsome in that effortless way that comes from generations of perfect genetics and expensive orthodontia. Sandy blonde hair, perfect smile, the kind of tan that comes from yacht clubs and country clubs. He worked as a venture capitalist, which as far as I could tell meant he moved his family's money around and called it a job. His mother was Senator Victoria Morrison. If you follow California politics, you know her. She'd been a state senator for 16 years, one of the most powerful women in the legislature. Beautiful, polished, ruthless. Silver hair always perfectly styled. Designer suits that cost more than most people's monthly rent. The kind of woman who could smile warmly at you while planning your destruction. Brandon's father had died when Brandon was 15, a boating accident, though the family never talked about it in detail. Victoria had raised Brandon alone, and from everything I observed, she'd created a monster in her own image. From the first moment I met Brandon, I didn't trust him. It was at a dinner Sarah organized to introduce us. Some expensive restaurant in La Jolla with ocean views and prix fixe menus that cost $200 per person. Brandon showed up 20 minutes late, didn't apologize, and spent the first 10 minutes on his phone handling urgent business. When he finally put the phone down and shook my hand, his grip was practiced. Firm but not too firm. Eye contact held for exactly the right amount of time. Everything about him felt rehearsed. "Dr. Chen, Sarah's told me so much about you," he said with that perfect smile. "It must be incredibly rewarding, saving lives every day." "It is," I replied. "What is it you do, Brandon?" "I'm in venture capital. Identifying promising startups, helping them scale, generating returns for our investors." "Which startups are you working with currently?" He blinked. Just for a second, there was something in his eyes. Irritation that I'd asked a specific question. "Several in the biotech space." "I'd bore you with the details. I'm a surgeon. Biotech doesn't bore me." Sarah jumped in. "Dad, Brandon's being modest. He just closed a deal with a company developing artificial heart valves." I looked at Brandon. "Which company?" "I'm afraid I can't discuss specifics due to NDAs." For the rest of dinner, I watched him. Watched how he touched Sarah, possessive, controlling. His hand on her lower back, guiding her. His fingers on her wrist when she reached for her wine glass, a subtle signal to slow down. Watched how he talked over her when she mentioned her work, redirecting conversations back to himself. And I watched how Sarah changed around him. She was quieter. More careful with her words. She laughed at his jokes even when they weren't funny. She was performing for him, trying to be the woman he wanted. It made my chest ache. After dinner, when Brandon went to get the car, I had 2 minutes alone with Sarah. "You don't have to change yourself for him," I said quietly. She looked surprised. "I'm not changing myself. Sarah, I watched you tonight. You're different around him." He's important to me, Dad. I want you to like him." "Do you like him? Really like him? Or do you like the idea of him?" She was quiet for a moment. "Then, why can't you just be happy for me?" "I want to be happy for you. But I'm your father. And something about him doesn't sit right." The valet brought Brandon's car, a black Mercedes-AMG GT, $150,000 worth of automotive excess. He honked the horn twice. Sarah flinched. "I have to go," she said. "Please, Dad. Just try to get to know him." I watched them drive away, and I felt that surgeon's instinct kicking in. The sense that something was wrong, even if I couldn't pinpoint exactly what. Like an EKG showing an irregular rhythm that might mean nothing or might mean sudden cardiac arrest. I should have trusted that instinct more. Over the next year, I watched my daughter slowly disappear into the Morrison family. They got engaged after 8 months. The ring was a 5-carat diamond that probably cost more than I made in a year. Victoria threw an engagement party at her estate in Rancho Santa Fe, a sprawling Mediterranean mansion worth probably $10 million. I remember standing in that house, surrounded by senators and tech executives and old money families, feeling completely out of place. These people spoke a different language. Not English, the language of wealth and power and connections. Victoria found me on the terrace, looking out at her manicured gardens. "David," she said, her voice warm but her eyes cold. "I'm so glad you could make it. Sarah speaks so highly of you. Thank you for having me. I want you to know that Brandon adores your daughter. We all do. She's going to be such a wonderful addition to our family. Something about the way she said addition bothered me. Like Sarah was an acquisition. A merger. Sarah's very independent, I said carefully. She has her own career, her own goals. Of course. Though I hope she'll consider how her choices reflect on the family now. Brandon has political ambitions, you know. He's planning to run for city council next year, then Congress. Having the right partner is crucial for that kind of career. Sarah's an environmental engineer, not a political wife. Victoria's smile didn't waver, but her eyes hardened. Sarah can be whatever she chooses to be. But choices have consequences, don't they? I'm sure a surgeon understands that better than anyone. She walked away, leaving me standing there with a cold knot in my stomach. The wedding was 6 months later. Everything Victoria wanted, a lavish affair at the Hotel del Coronado, 300 guests, covered by society magazines. The ceremony cost probably $500,000. I paid for what I could, though Victoria made it clear my contribution was appreciated but unnecessary. How thoughtful, David, she'd said when I gave her the check for $50,000. I know surgeons do well, but this must represent a significant portion of your savings. Don't worry, I'll make sure the wedding looks appropriately expensive regardless of your contribution. The casual condescension was like a slap. But I smiled and said nothing. At the wedding reception, I watched Victoria and Brandon together. They stood in a corner for several minutes, engaged in intense conversation. Victoria kept glancing at Sarah, then back to Brandon. She was giving him instructions. About what, I couldn't hear. But the body language was clear. My sister Catherine found me at the bar. You look like you're at a funeral, not a wedding, she said, ordering a whiskey. Catherine Chin Williams. 65 years old, Harvard Law, former federal prosecutor, current white-collar criminal defense attorney. Sharp as a scalpel and twice as dangerous. She'd spent 20 years putting wealthy criminals in prison, then spent the last 15 getting them out. She knew how the system worked from both sides. I have a very bad feeling about this, I told her. About Brandon? About the whole family. There's something wrong here, Catherine. I can feel it. She studied my face. You want me to look into them? No, I said, because Sarah was happy. Or seemed happy. Sarah's made her choice. I need to respect that. But if that changes. If that changes, you'll be the first person I call. I should have called her that night. Should have asked her to investigate the Morrison family immediately. It might have saved my daughter from what came next. The first year of marriage seemed fine on the surface. Sarah and Brandon bought a house in Rancho Santa Fe, Victoria's gift to them. 6 bedrooms, pool, ocean views. $4 million. I visited every other Sunday for dinner. Each time, I noticed small changes in Sarah. She'd cut her hair shorter, Brandon prefers it this way. She'd started dressing more conservatively, Victoria says it's more appropriate for political events. She'd reduced her hours at work, Brandon needs me to attend functions with him. Piece by piece, my daughter was being erased. Sarah, are you happy? I asked her one Sunday when Brandon was taking a business call in his study. Of course I'm happy. But she wouldn't meet my eyes. You seem tired. I am tired. Brandon's been stressed about the city council campaign. And Victoria has very specific ideas about how a candidate's wife should present herself. You're not his accessory, honey. You're a person with your own career. I know that, Dad. Her voice had an edge now. But marriage is about compromise. It's about mutual compromise. What has Brandon compromised? She stood up. I don't want to have this conversation. Sarah. Please, Dad. Just, let it go. So I did. Because what choice did I have? Push too hard and I'd lose her completely. 14 months into the marriage, everything changed. Sarah called me at 10:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was in bed, reading a cardiology journal, when my phone rang. Dad? Her voice was shaking. I sat up immediately. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. I need to tell someone. I'm pregnant. My heart swelled. Sarah, that's wonderful. How do you feel? Terrified, she admitted. Excited. Confused. I told Brandon this morning and his reaction was strange. The warmth in my chest turned cold. Strange how? He got really quiet. Then he immediately called Victoria. They've been locked in his study for the past 4 hours. I can hear them arguing but I can't make out what they're saying. Arguing about what? I don't know. But Dad, I have this feeling, something's wrong. Brandon's been acting weird all day. Cold. Distant. He won't even look at me. How far along are you? The doctor says about 8 weeks. But Dad, Brandon made me promise not to tell anyone yet. Not even you. He wants to wait until the second trimester to announce it. But I couldn't. I needed to tell someone. We talked for another hour. She was anxious in a way I'd never heard before. That specific fear that comes when you know something terrible is about to happen but you can't see what it is yet. Sarah, listen to me carefully. If anything feels wrong, if you feel unsafe for even a second, you call me immediately. Any time, day or night. Do you understand? You're being dramatic, Dad. I'm fine. Promise me. Okay. I promise. When we hung up, I couldn't shake the dread settling in my stomach. I called Catherine. I need you to look into the Morrison family, I told her. All of it. Victoria's finances, Brandon's background, everything. What's going on? Sarah's pregnant. And Brandon and Victoria are acting like it's a crisis instead of a celebration. I'm on it, Catherine said immediately. Give me a week. She called me back in 5 days. David, you need to hear this. Her voice was tight. I dug into Brandon Morrison's financials. He has a trust fund worth $65 million. That's not surprising given. Let me finish. The trust fully vests when he turns 35, which is in 7 months. But there's a clause. If he's married at the time of vesting, his spouse is entitled to 40% in the event of divorce. And if there's a child, she's entitled to full custody and child support calculated on the full value of the trust. I felt ice forming in my veins. So if Sarah divorces him after the trust vests, she walks away with at least $26 million, plus child support of roughly $200,000 per month. That's based on California family law calculations. And if she's not around? Long, terrible pause. If she dies before the trust vests, Brandon inherits everything. No split. Jesus Christ, Catherine. There's more. I looked into Victoria Morrison's first husband, Brandon's father. The official story is he died in a boating accident when Brandon was 15. I know that story. The official story is bullshit, David. I found the original police report. It was buried, but I have contacts. Victoria was on the boat when he died. She claimed he'd been drinking, fell overboard, hit his head on the hull. But the coroner noted defensive wounds on his hands. Bruises on his neck. And his blood alcohol was only .04, well below impairment. You're saying she killed him. I'm saying it was never properly investigated because Victoria Morrison made some calls to some powerful friends. The case was closed within 48 hours. She inherited $60 million. My hands were shaking. Catherine, Sarah's going on their yacht in 2 weeks. Some family celebration. Then you need to stop her. If I tell her what we suspect, she'll defend him. She's not ready to believe it yet. Then you're going on that yacht too. And you're not letting her out of your sight. I made a decision in that moment. I need recording equipment. Something that can't be easily detected. Something that uploads to the cloud in real time. David, if you're thinking what I think you're thinking. They're not going to hurt my daughter, Catherine. Not while I'm breathing. I'll get you everything you need. But David? Be careful. These people are dangerous. So am I said. They just don't know it yet. Catherine equipped me with 3 things, a pen with a built-in camera and microphone, a phone with automatic cloud backup of all recordings, and a GPS tracker sewn into the lining of my jacket. Everything you record uploads automatically, she explained. They can't delete it, can't destroy it. It's already saved on secure servers. What if the signal is bad offshore? The pen has local storage. Even if the upload fails, we'll have the footage. Just make sure you don't lose it. The night of the yacht party was October 15th. A Saturday. The sky was clear, stars bright. Perfect weather for a celebration. Or a murder. I arrived at the San Diego Marina at 6 p.m. The Morrison yacht, the Sovereignty, was massive. 120 feet of sleek white luxury, probably worth $12 million. Crystal chandeliers visible through the windows. Teak decks. A crew of 8. Victoria stood at the gangway in a cream-colored dress, greeting guests with that practiced politician's smile. David, she said warmly, taking my hand in both of hers. So wonderful you could join us. This is such a special night for our family. Wouldn't miss it, I said, matching her fake warmth. Sarah was already on board, standing near the bow rail. When she saw me, relief flooded her face. She looked better than she had in weeks, color in her cheeks, light in her eyes. She was wearing a navy dress that concealed her small baby bump. Dad! She hugged me tightly. I'm so glad you're here. How are you feeling, honey? Better. The morning sickness finally stopped. She put her hand on her stomach. 5 months now. Can you believe it? I'm so proud of you, Sarah. Brandon appeared beside us. David. Good to see you. His handshake was firm but his eyes were cold. Mother's planned quite an evening. We're sailing down the coast, having dinner under the stars. I activated the recording pen in my pocket. Sounds wonderful. The yacht pulled away from the marina at 7 p.m. We headed south, the lights of San Diego glittering behind us. About 35 guests on board, Victoria's political donors, society friends, wealthy people who talked in low voices about campaigns and investments. I stayed close to Sarah all evening. Watched everything. Recorded conversations. At one point, I caught Brandon and Victoria in intense conversation near the stern. They didn't know I could see them. Victoria was gesturing sharply, her face angry. Brandon nodded, his expression grim. They were planning something. I could feel it. Dinner was served at 9 p.m. in the main salon below deck. Lobster, champagne, caviar. I sat next to Sarah, directly across from Victoria and Brandon. I noticed they barely touched their food. They kept exchanging glances. Silent communication. My heart rate increased. I checked my phone discreetly, all recordings uploading successfully. At 10:30, Victoria stood up. "Everyone, if I could have your attention for a moment." She raised her champagne glass. "I want to thank you all for joining us on this special evening. Family is everything to me, and tonight we celebrate the newest addition to the Morrison family." Polite applause. Sarah smiled, surprised and pleased. "Sarah, darling," Victoria continued. "Would you join Brandon and me on the upper deck for a moment? We have a special surprise for you." Sarah looked at me, uncertain. "It'll just take a minute," Brandon said, standing up. "Come on." Every instinct I had screamed danger. "I'll come too," I said, starting to stand. "Actually, David," Victoria's voice turned sharp. "This is a private family matter. Morrison family. I'm sure you understand." Sarah put her hand on my arm. "Dad, it's fine. I'll be right back." "Sarah. Dad. Please." She smiled, but I could see uncertainty in her eyes. "It's okay." I watched them leave. Counted to 30. Then I followed. I climbed the exterior stairs to the upper deck quietly, staying in the shadows. My phone was recording. The pen in my pocket was recording. Everything was being captured. When I reached the upper deck, I heard raised voices. I peered around the corner of the cabin structure. Sarah stood near the stern railing. Brandon was on her left, Victoria on her right. They had her cornered, blocking any escape. "I don't understand what you're asking me to do," Sarah was saying. Her voice was shaking. "I think you understand perfectly," Victoria said coldly. "You're going to sign the papers Brandon's lawyer prepared. You're going to agree to a divorce, waive all claims to the trust fund, and disappear from our lives. I'm pregnant with your grandchild." "You're pregnant with a financial liability," Victoria snapped. "A mistake that's going to cost my son $26 million. Did you really think we'd let that happen, Brandon?" Sarah turned to her husband, desperate. "Tell her she's wrong. Tell her this isn't what you want." Brandon's face was cold. "Empty. Sign the papers, Sarah. Make this easy on yourself." "And if I don't?" Victoria stepped closer. "Then you'll have an unfortunate accident. Just like you were supposed to 3 weeks ago when your car's brake lines mysteriously failed. But someone fixed them before you drove." She glanced at me, still hidden in the shadows, as if she knew I was there. "Someone interfered. So we had to accelerate our timeline." My blood turned to ice. "The brakes." I'd fixed Sarah's brakes when she mentioned the brake warning light. I'd accidentally saved her life without knowing she was in danger. "You tried to kill me." Sarah's voice broke. "We tried to make it look like an accident," Victoria corrected. "A tragic death of a young woman. Brandon would have been the grieving widower. Very sympathetic for a political campaign. But since you survived that, we'll have to be more direct." She pulled something from her pocket. "A syringe. This is pentobarbital. Veterinary grade. In your condition, with your blood pressure already elevated from pregnancy, it'll cause a cardiac event. You'll fall, hit your head, go overboard. A tragic accident. We'll cry at your funeral. Brandon will inherit everything." I stepped out of the shadows. "You're not touching my daughter." All 3 of them spun around. Victoria's eyes narrowed when she saw me. "David. How long have you been standing there?" "Long enough. Everything you just said has been recorded and uploaded to secure servers. Admission of attempted murder, conspiracy, all of it. For the first time, I saw real fear flicker across Victoria's face. Then Brandon lunged at me. He was 30 years younger, athletic, strong. But I'd spent 4 decades as a surgeon. Steady hands. Sharp reflexes. When he grabbed for my phone, I sidestepped, let his momentum carry him past me. "Sarah, get below deck now," I shouted. She started to move, but Victoria grabbed her arm. Yanked her back. "Let her go." I moved toward Victoria. That's when Brandon recovered and tackled me from behind. We went down hard on the teak deck. My phone skittered away toward the railing. Brandon's hands closed around my throat. "You should have minded your own business, old man," he hissed. I couldn't breathe. Black spots danced in my vision. I clawed at his hands, but he was too strong. Then suddenly the pressure released. Sarah had grabbed a deck chair and swung it like a baseball bat, connecting with Brandon's ribs. "Get away from my father." Brandon roared in pain and fury. He spun toward Sarah, his face contorted with rage. And Victoria pushed her. It happened in slow motion and too fast at the same time. Victoria's hands on Sarah's shoulders. A hard shove. Sarah's eyes went wide with shock and terror. She went backward over the railing. Her scream cut off as she hit the water 40 feet below. The sound was wrong. Too sharp. Like she'd struck something hard, the hull, a cleat, something, before the ocean took her. No. I was on my feet, rushing to the railing. The ocean was black. Completely black. The yacht's lights only illuminated about 20 feet of churning dark water. Beyond that, nothing. "Sarah!" I screamed into the darkness. "Sarah, can you hear me?" Silence. Just the slap of waves against the hull and the distant sound of jazz music still playing from the salon below. "She'll swim to shore," Victoria said calmly behind me. She was fixing her hair, completely composed. "Or she won't. Either way, the problem is solved." I turned to face her. And in that moment, I understood what real hatred felt like. Pure, cold, absolute hatred. "You just murdered your daughter-in-law in front of a witness." Victoria smiled. "What witness, David?" "You. The unstable father who's been making wild accusations about our family for weeks." She gestured to Brandon. "Take his phone. Throw it overboard." Brandon scrambled for my phone, picked it up, and hurled it into the ocean. "No." I lunged for it, but it was already gone. "Without that recording, you have nothing," Victoria said. 35 witnesses downstairs who'll all testify that your daughter was drinking, that she climbed the railing herself, that she fell. All respected members of San Diego society. All willing to swear to what I tell them to swear to." I looked at the black water where my daughter had disappeared. Every instinct screamed at me to jump in after her. But I was 67 years old. The water was probably 55 degrees. I wasn't a strong swimmer. If I went in, I'd die too. And then no one would be left to make them pay. So I made the hardest decision of my life. I walked to the ship's radio and called the Coast Guard. "This is Dr. David Chen aboard the yacht Sovereignty, 30 miles southwest of San Diego. My daughter has gone overboard. I need immediate rescue response." Brandon tried to grab the radio from me, but I held on. The dispatcher's voice crackled back, "Copy that, sir. We're dispatching units now. Do you have her last known position?" I gave them our exact coordinates. Everything I could think of. Victoria's face had gone pale. "You just made a very serious mistake, David." "No," I said. "You did. When you threw my pregnant daughter into the ocean. By the time the Coast Guard gets here, everyone on this yacht will tell the same story. That your daughter was drunk. That she climbed the railing. That she fell. They can tell whatever story they want. But I know the truth. And I'm going to prove it. The Coast Guard arrived 37 minutes later. 37 minutes of me standing at that railing, screaming Sarah's name into the void until my voice gave out. 37 minutes of Brandon and Victoria below deck, coaching their guests. When the Coast Guard boarded, a dozen people swore they'd seen Sarah drinking heavily. Seen her climb onto the railing. Seen her lose her balance and fall. Lies. All lies. But without my phone recording, it was my word against 35 witnesses. The Coast Guard searched. Their searchlights swept across the black water, looking for any sign of life. I stood on their cutter, wrapped in a blanket, watching those lights sweep back and forth. 1 hour passed. Then 2. At the 2-hour and 40-minute mark, I heard a voice crackle over the radio. "We've got something." I gripped the railing so hard my knuckles turned white. "Alive?" another voice asked. Long pause. Too long. Barely. Severe hypothermia. Head trauma. She's unconscious. We need a medevac now. They brought her up in a rescue basket. I barely recognized her. Sarah's face was gray-blue. Her lips purple. Blood matted in her dark hair from a gash on her forehead. Her body was limp, lifeless. "Is she breathing?" I asked the medic, my voice barely a whisper. "Barely. Core temperature is 88 degrees. She's in cardiac distress. We need to move immediately." They loaded her onto the Coast Guard vessel. I started to follow. "Sir, we need you to stay here," one of the officers said. "We need statements. This is a crime scene now." "That's my daughter." "I know, sir. The helicopter will take her to UC San Diego Medical Center. You can meet her there. But right now, we need you to tell us exactly what happened." I looked at Sarah's still form being carried away. Every instinct screamed at me to go with her. But the officer was right. If I left now, Victoria and Brandon would control the narrative. They'd make this disappear. "All right," I said. "I'll tell you everything." I gave my statement. Told them exactly what I'd seen. How Victoria and Brandon had cornered Sarah. How they'd threatened her. How Victoria had pushed her overboard. The young officer taking notes looked uncomfortable. "Mr. Chen, you understand these are very serious accusations against a state senator. More serious than attempted murder. I'm just saying this will be complicated. Senator Morrison has significant connections. We'll investigate thoroughly, but you should prepare yourself for a difficult process." By the time I got to the hospital 3 hours later, Victoria's lawyers had already arrived. Not Brandon's lawyers. Not family lawyers. Criminal defense attorneys. The most expensive in California. 2 men in $5,000 suits stood in the ICU waiting room, talking in low voices with a hospital administrator. A doctor approached me. Young, exhausted looking. "Dr. Chen." "I'm Dr. Reeves. We've worked together before." "I remember." "How is she?" "Critical but stable. We've treated the hypothermia and she's warming slowly. But she has a skull fracture. Subdural hematoma. We had to perform emergency surgery to relieve the pressure." "The baby?" His face told me everything before he spoke. "I'm sorry. The trauma, the hypothermia, the oxygen deprivation. There was nothing we could do." I sank into a chair. The waiting room spun around me. My grandchild was dead. There's something else, Dr. Reeves said quietly. Sarah's still unconscious. We've induced a coma to let her brain heal. The next 48 hours are critical. One of the lawyers approached. Dr. Chen, I'm James Kirkland, representing the Morrison family. We want you to know that Senator Morrison and her son are deeply concerned about this tragic accident. It wasn't an accident. Dr. Chen, I understand you're upset, but making inflammatory accusations. Get away from me. We're prepared to offer you and Sarah substantial financial support during this difficult time. All medical expenses covered, N. I stood up. I'm not a violent man. Never have been. But in that moment, if that lawyer had said one more word, I might have become one. He must have seen something in my eyes because he stepped back, nodded curtly, and retreated to his colleague. I sat back down and pulled out my backup phone. The one Catherine had insisted I carry. I called her. Catherine. My voice was dead. They threw Sarah off the yacht. She's in a coma. The baby's dead. And they're going to get away with it unless we do something. Where are you? UC San Diego Medical Center. Don't move. Don't talk to anyone. I'm leaving LA right now. I'll be there in 90 minutes. Catherine? Yes. I need you to destroy them. Not just charge them. Not just investigate. Destroy them so completely they wish they'd never been born. Long pause. David, I've been waiting for you to say that. I'm already making calls. By the time I get there, I'll have every piece of information on the Morrison family that exists. And we're going to use it to bury them so deep they'll never see daylight again. Catherine arrived at dawn. She walked into that ICU waiting room carrying 2 laptops and a briefcase, looking like an avenging angel. She sat down next to me without a word. We sat in silence for several minutes, both looking through the glass window at Sarah's room. At the machines breathing for her. At the monitors tracking her struggling heartbeat. Tell me everything, Catherine said finally. Every single detail. So I did. The conversation on the upper deck. Victoria's admission about sabotaging Sarah's brakes. The syringe filled with pentobarbital. The push. All of it. When I finished, Catherine was quiet for a long time. Okay, she said. Here's what we're dealing with. Victoria Morrison has been in politics for 16 years. She's wealthy, connected, and very, very careful. But nobody's perfect. Everyone leaves traces. She opened her first laptop. While you were giving your statement to the Coast Guard, I was working. I called in every favor I had. Former colleagues at the DOJ. Investigative journalists. Financial forensics experts. She turned the screen tower. Me. Financial records. Bank statements. Spreadsheets. Victoria Morrison has offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands totaling $83 million. That money didn't come from her Senate salary of $174,000 per year. Where did it come from? Corruption. I traced payments from a pharmaceutical company called Apex Biosolutions. They've been paying Victoria $500,000 quarterly for the past 12 years. In exchange, she's been blocking drug pricing legislation that would cut into their profits. That's bribery. That's a federal crime. And I have documentation of every payment, every blocked bill, every quid pro quo arrangement. She pulled up another file. But it gets better. Remember Brandon's father? The boating accident? You said it was suspicious. I found the medical examiner who did the autopsy. Dr. Robert Harrison, retired, living in Arizona now. He's been carrying guilt about that case for 15 years. I flew down there yesterday and got his sworn statement. She handed me a document. I read it, my hands shaking. Defensive wounds. Strangulation marks. Bruising around the throat. Fracture of the hyoid bone, which only occurs in manual strangulation. Victoria killed him, I said. Strangled him with her bare hands, then threw him overboard and claimed he fell. Dr. Harrison documented everything but was pressured to change his findings. Victoria had friends in the state medical board. He was threatened with losing his license if he didn't rule it an accident. Will he testify? He's ready. He says he's wanted to tell the truth for 15 years. Catherine opened another file. I also found 3 women who worked for Victoria's campaigns. All signed NDAs. All received cash settlements. For what? Sexual harassment by Brandon. Assault. One woman, her name is Maria Gonzalez, says Brandon raped her at a campaign fundraiser 5 years ago. She went to Victoria, not the police. Victoria paid her $300,000 to sign an NDA and threatened to ruin her family if she ever spoke. Can she testify? If we can break the NDA, yes. And I think we can. NDAs don't protect criminal activity. She closed the laptop and looked at me. David, I've also got something else. Something that might be the most important piece. What? The yacht captain. Miguel Rodriguez. He's been working for the Morrison family for 8 years. I tracked him down yesterday. He's terrified of Victoria because she's been threatening to report him to ICE. She's been holding his immigration status over his head. My heart started beating faster. Can he testify? He can now. I got him a lawyer. We're expediting his permanent residency application. He's protected. And David, he heard everything that happened on the upper deck that night. Everything. He was in the bridge, monitoring radio communications. The windows were open. He heard Victoria admit to sabotaging Sarah's car. Heard her threaten Sarah with the pentobarbital. Heard everything. I felt hope for the first time in 18 hours. Then we have them. Not yet. But we will. I'm taking all of this to the FBI. Not local police, Victoria has too many connections there. Federal. My contact is Special Agent Monica Torres in LA. She's been wanting to investigate Victoria for years. How long will this take? Months, probably. Maybe a year. Federal cases move slowly. But David, when we're done, Victoria Morrison won't just lose her Senate seat. She'll spend the rest of her life in prison. And Brandon will be right next to her. Over the next 6 days, Sarah remained unconscious. I sat by her bed every day, holding her hand, talking to her even though she couldn't hear me. On the 7th day, her eyes opened. Dad? Her voice was barely a whisper. I'm here, sweetheart. I'm right here. She looked confused, disoriented. Then memory flooded back. I saw it in her eyes, the horror, the betrayal. They pushed me, she whispered. Victoria and Brandon. They tried to kill me. I know. I saw everything. The baby? Her hand moved to her stomach. I couldn't answer. Couldn't find words. She saw it in my face. Started crying. Deep, wrenching sobs that made all the monitors spike. Nurses rushed in. I was ushered out while they sedated her. Through the window, I watched my daughter break apart. And something final hardened in my chest. The Morrison family would pay. For Sarah. For my grandchild. For everything. The FBI arrested Brandon Morrison 8 weeks later. Early morning raid. Federal agents in bulletproof vests. News cameras everywhere. Sarah and I watched it on TV from her hospital room. She'd been transferred to rehabilitation, learning to walk again, fighting through PTSD and depression. We watched Brandon being led out in handcuffs, his perfect hair disheveled, his face shocked. Federal charges, the news anchor said. Attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud. Sarah squeezed my hand. It's really happening. It's really happening. Victoria Morrison was arrested 3 days later. The charges were extensive: corruption, bribery, money laundering, accessory to attempted murder, and first-degree murder in the death of her husband. She didn't go quietly. Held a press conference, called it a political witch hunt, blamed enemies and conspiracies. Nobody believed her. The trials became a media sensation. Wealthy senator and her son accused of murder. The story had everything. Catherine worked with the prosecution, coordinating strategy. She was brilliant. Methodical. Relentless. The trials lasted 9 months. I sat in that courtroom every single day. Sarah sat beside me when she was strong enough. We watched Catherine systematically destroy the Morrison defense. She called Dr. Harrison, the medical examiner, who testified about the strangulation marks on Brandon's father's neck. She called Maria Gonzalez and 2 other women who testified about Brandon's assaults, about Victoria's threats and payoffs. She called Miguel Rodriguez, who testified that he'd heard Victoria admit to sabotaging Sarah's car, heard her threaten Sarah with murder. She called the mechanic who'd worked on Sarah's car, who showed the deliberately cut brake line. She called forensic accountants who traced Victoria's offshore accounts and documented every illegal payment. And finally, she called Sarah. My daughter walked to that witness stand with her head high. She was thin, still healing, but strong. She testified for 4 hours. Told everything. The pregnancy. Brandon's cold reaction. Victoria's threats on the yacht. The moment they pushed her. I was in that water for almost 4 hours, she said, her voice steady. In the dark. In the cold. I couldn't feel my body. I thought I was dying. I thought my baby was dying. And all I could think was that the man I loved, the man I'd married, had thrown me away like garbage because I was worth less to him than money. The courtroom was silent. Brandon's lawyer tried to break her on cross-examination. Suggested she'd been drinking. Suggested she'd climbed the railing herself. Sarah looked directly at Brandon. I loved you. I would have done anything for you. But you're just like your mother, a monster who values money more than human life. And I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what you are. The jury deliberated for 7 hours. Guilty. On all counts. Both of them. Sentencing came 3 months later. Victoria Morrison sat at the defense table in a prison jumpsuit. All her power, all her beauty, all her carefully constructed image, gone. She looked old. Broken. Brandon sat next to her, staring at the floor. The judge was a woman named Margaret Chen, no relation to me. She looked at Victoria with pure contempt. Senator Morrison, you spent 16 years in public service. You were trusted with representing the people of California. Instead, you murdered your husband, sold your office to the highest bidder, and conspired to murder your pregnant daughter-in-law. You are a disgrace. Victoria stared straight ahead. Empty. For the first-degree murder of your husband, you are sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole. For conspiracy to commit murder, an additional 25 years. For corruption and bribery, an additional 10 years. These sentences will run consecutively. She turned to Brandon. Mr. Morrison, you attempted to murder your wife and unborn child for money. You are a coward and a monster. For attempted murder, you are sentenced to 30 years. For conspiracy, 15 years. For assault, 5 years. 50 years total, to run consecutively. Brandon started crying. Begging for mercy. The judge ignored him. As they were led away, Victoria looked back at me. Our eyes met across the courtroom. I didn't smile. Didn't gloat. Just looked at her. And I hoped she understood, this was what happened when you hurt someone's child. Victoria Morrison died in prison 19 months later. Heart attack. She was 68. I didn't attend the funeral. Brandon Morrison is still in federal prison in Colorado. He'll be there for the next 48 years. Sarah is 32 now. She sold the Rancho Santa Fe house, donated the money to domestic violence shelters. She finished her master's degree and now runs a nonprofit building water systems in developing countries. She calls it New Beginnings. She still doesn't date much. Says she's healing on her own timeline. That's okay. She's building a life that matters. Helping people. Making the world better. Last month, she called me. Dad, I'm writing a book. About what happened. About surviving. I want to help other women recognize the warning signs. What are you calling it? Thrown away but not broken. What do you think? I think it's perfect. We talk every week. Have dinner every Sunday. We don't talk about the Morrisons anymore. We talk about her work. About the communities she's helping. About the future. People ask me sometimes if I feel guilty. If destroying the Morrison family makes me as bad as them. I sleep fine at night. Because here's what I learned, quiet people aren't weak people. We're patient people. We observe. We plan. We wait for the right moment. And when that moment comes, we don't miss. The Morrison family thought they could throw my daughter away and face no consequences. Thought their money and power made them untouchable. They were wrong. I'm a surgeon. I understand systems. I understand how to find weakness and remove disease. The Morrison family was a cancer. Corrupt. Violent. Deadly. So I cut them out. Completely. That's my story. How a surgeon and his sister destroyed one of the most powerful political families in California. Was it revenge? Absolutely. Was it justice? I believe so. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to fight back against someone more powerful than you? And subscribe to Revenge Room for more stories about people who refuse to stay silent. Remember, the quiet ones aren't weak. We're just waiting for the right moment. Thank you for listening.